and then I would like after that seemed as if I had triggered a bot of some kind by saying.
I just should have hit the record button earlier, but
yeah, no.
Okay, sorry for that.
In the quick moment, I thought it might be a snazzy bot that you guys had built, and then I realized that maybe you just pushed the button. But
no,
in any event,
technologically sophisticated here.
So what I'd like to do is quickly run through and set a little bit of a baseline in terms of what this technology does, because there's a lot of noise in the blockchain and smart contract space as to what the capabilities and functionality of the tech is and what it can do and what it can't do. And then I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the use cases, and then I'll take a few minutes to run through one of our demonstrator backends. At Monex, we're a very backend company, which makes it hard to do snazzy demos which resonate and connect when you're going to be showing people command line, but in certain instances, a little bit of command line and backend can't hurt. So I won't take up too much of folks' time with log files, but it'll give me a chance to sort of explain what's happening after I run through. So blockchain, smart contracts, and ecosystem applications. Blockchains are fairly simple to explain on the one hand, although there's a rabbit hole once you get beyond the superficial. But what blockchains are, they're event logs that are assumed to be operated and ordered across multiple organizations. And this is really key, this idea that we're running systems across various organizations. And this is one of the key assumptions of this range of tooling that I'm going to be talking about here that make it very, very different from how we've traditionally thought about building applications. What blockchains give us from an application builder's perspective is an understanding of who did what when. And then from a non-functional requirements standpoint, this gives us data assurance that can run across organizations. Smart contracts, on the other hand, the way that they're used by blockchainers is a misnomer. They're neither smart nor are they contracts. They're functionally scripts that are assumed to be operated and verified across multiple organizations. They typically sit on top of blockchain-based event logs and then respond to various events that are propagated up by the blockchain itself. What smart contracts give us is an ability to understand who did what how, or stated from a sort of less functional requirements perspective, a non-functional requirements perspective, process assurance across organizations. And this is really, really key to unlock a whole range of different use cases, which I'll talk about briefly. And then finally, ecosystem applications, which are applications that are operated by multiple organizations. And while blockchain technology as one suite of tooling is what gets on the cover of The Economist, the real paradigm shift that's happening here is this idea of ecosystem applications, where we're taking one of the most core fundamental ideas of how we built technology, namely that you would have a single legal entity that would accept the risk for running a single application. And we're throwing that assumption out the window and saying we can build applications more effectively in some instances if we run them across organizations and spread the legal risk. Which leads me to the next topic. What problem suite are ecosystem applications built to address? And largely these boil down to problems of coordination. If you look at a whole range of highly verified data sets that need to be coordinated across multiple actors, you typically will land in a place that has a high level of cost and a high level of humans intermediating data communication. So in a whole range of finance and insurance applications where we spent a lot of time in the early phases of the blockchains for industry market, you see time and time again people or good blockchain use cases are where you see a lot of emails that have attached Excel files to them. And these existing systems of coordination, the cost of them breaks down into roughly 3 buckets. The first bucket is authenticity and attribution costs. In other words, is the data that is being moved across organizations, is this reliable? Is this precise? And is it accurate? On top of that, you have reconciliation costs that arise because typically how we move data across organizations using the paradigm of the emailed Excel document is that we take a snapshot of one set of data, dump that into some vehicle like a Excel spreadsheet, and then we import it on the other end. This creates reconciliation costs in highly mobile and moving environments. And then finally, we need humans to coordinate and move a lot of this data around. If we want to reduce those costs, then what we need is a chain of custody over our data, a super organizational focus as to what our data is. And we need to think about redeploying humans into high value activities, which is really what ecosystem applications are built to do, namely provide data assurance across organizations, process assurance across organizations, and then as well, new opportunities to create value in various domains. In terms of those domains, the rest of this presentation is going to be focused on one specific area where we see a lot of early traction, which is around logistics and supply chains. So you have a whole range of different specific domains that are roughly interested in understanding at an ecosystem level across a whole value chain where our goods went. And we call these typically tag and track systems. In other words, I'm going to tag a physical good, and then I'm going to track it as it flows through the value chain. Well, just to review what ecosystem applications can provide, they can give us data assurance across organizations, process assurance across organizations, new opportunities to create value. If we map those to a few market dynamics, which are typical in logistics and supply chains, then we end up here with some of the very interesting use cases that we're seeing in the logistics domain. Namely, as I mentioned, tag and track systems. You also have on-demand insurance. In other words, if we know who owned what when within a value chain, that allows insurance companies to provide on-demand, dynamically modifying insurance over goods that are in stock for any one participant within that value chain, because the insurance company can have assurance and understanding of who owned what when, which is a combination of who did what when, as well as who did what how from data.
Can I just interrupt?
Yep.
Kate, I don't see any content in the boxes for the use cases. Maybe it's just on our side, or maybe it's the way it goes on. Yeah.
It's on our side.
Oh,
it's
okay. Sorry.
It's too light for our big screen up here, but it shows well.
Sorry. Oh, okay. Sorry.
We see it remotely pretty well.
Okay. My apologies. Yeah, there's something in the.
Okay, no problem. So that's the on-demand insurance, and then you have supply chain financing, which is a very new, interesting way to start co-creating value. And these use cases are sort of tiered, and a lot of systems are starting right now to move tag and track systems through product development cycles and getting them close to, but not currently in production. And then we will see use cases such as on-demand insurance, supply chain financing happen after we have this base understanding of where goods are within a value chain. Now, a lot of blockchains is very focused on. I'm going to skip through this and get to the demo. A lot of blockchains is really focused on this idea of tracking systems, like I said, tracking goods as they flow through the value chain. Well, as legal engineers, and our company at Monax is really built, as I mentioned earlier, on this idea that blockchains and ecosystem applications are fundamentally legal tech. we look at this and we see a whole range of UCC agreements that are very simple business from a business rules perspective that can be layered and mapped and related to one another to build a true smart contracting system, or as we call them, active agreements. And so what I'm going to do here is just to talk is just to run through. As I said, we're a back-end company, so for us, this is about as fancy as it gets. But what I'm going through here is a typical demo that we would talk to when we're talking about what we do. So in the first steps of what I'm running now, I'm running a simple script, and it has made a permissioned blockchain in the background. And now it is going through the process of deploying a suite of smart contracts or scripts that run on the blockchain. And now it's going through a test sequence. And as you can see here, we're testing a whole range of different agreements and status of the agreements that link into business rules around how a particular good would flow through commerce. And all of these are held in code, and all these business rules are built modularly and layered on one another. And because they're operating in a infrastructure that is verified across a whole range of different ecosystem application participants, everyone can have a clean assurance as to where goods are, who had clear and legal title to those goods, and what other risks were associated with them, and who owns those risks at each time. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nina. Sorry, yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So you said, where do those business rules come from? Do you create those business rules and put them in a computable fashion, or do they come from your clients, or are there standardized business rules that you're using?
Yes, to all three. What I just demoed was is a rule suite that we have created. This is one of our what we call SDKs, which is a commercial product that we offer that allows for a whole range of complex financial logistics applications to be built on top of it. And it provides the base building blocks for doing that. There are a range of systems and range of other startups within our space that are taking a whole range of different approaches across that spectrum. We typically work with our customers to map their business processes. However, one thing that is important to understand is that a lot of the use cases where blockchain and smart contract technology can move forward is where there currently isn't very well mapped business processes, because you're talking about cross-company business processes, which typically are fuzzy and not as clearly defined and mapped as internal processes to a particular company. So we actually spend a lot of time with companies understanding at a cross-company level what does a particular process look like in terms of mapping it. So we do a bit of that. And then in terms of standardization, the whole blockchain and smart contract industry is quite nascent. So there is not a lot of standards right now. There's some emerging conventions, but it's going to take a little while until a lot of these are standardized. But there is a drive to move in that direction for sure.
And you map the process for one client or for two clients that are, intending to collaborate through the blockchain, or to have a process, operated through the blockchain. You then don't go on to share your business rules publicly, do you?
It would depend on the engagement. So yeah. I mean, we do work for hire, which would be proprietary to the customer. We build product for ourselves. We're about to open source a range of different companies. I mean, if you're an open source first software company, there's a whole range of different ways that you can approach that. It really a lot of that is just, is it furthering your business goals or is it not?
Got it.
Everyone loves to be open source, but we got to pay the bills.
Sure. I hear you.
So I wanted to turn it over. Sure.
Sorry, such a fascinating topic. So Casey, if I could just try to characterize what I heard you say where Monax sits. So you create a layer of trust maybe on top of the blockchain where you, by running these tests of these active agreements, you kind of assure the parties that the business rules are correct and the business logic is correctly mapped to each other and what else. So in other words, you serve as sort of a trust layer yourself.
No, definitely not. So we built a blockchain client, which is now moved into Hyperledger, which is a Linux Foundation hosted, largest collaborative group in the blockchain space. So there is a smart contract interpreter or a smart contract enabled a blockchain client called Burrow, which used to be made solely by us, and now it's moved into that collaborative space. We build a range of toolkits that enable you to boot basically blockchain networks, to manage the lifecycle of blockchain networks from a developer tool perspective. And then on the commercial side, what we do is we sell complex smart contracts, which is the suite of computation that I was just giving folks a glimpse of and not really talking at any great length to. And so that's what we do ourselves. So we're more of a developer tools company and sort of application components company. That's what we have been focused on to date.
Great. Thank you for clarifying.
In terms of trust for blockchainers, that is a very much an overloaded term. We always say these systems are not necessarily misplacing or replacing trust. They're just really giving us an ability to verify, which is really where the value is that all of the relevant ecosystem participants within the ecosystem application, they have an ability to verify all of the data transformations as well as the state changes that are happening within the smart contract layer. And that's what's unique and interesting and really enables this application building from a technical perspective across companies. And so what I'd like to do is just to hand it over to Nina to sort of tease out a few of the big things that we think are interesting from a pure legal tech perspective, and why we have always said that blockchains and smart contracts really are fundamentally legal tech, even though they often get lumped in with fintech.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Nina Kilbride. I'm head of legal engineering at Monax. As you have heard from Casey about some of our software. First, I'll explain a little bit how I got into the blockchain smart contract business with Monax, and that is I spent 18 years as a commercial litigator in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. And I was primarily a contracts litigator. And so I've seen the way all the pieces of contracts and commercial deals frequently break down. Over the course of my practice, technology became more and more important to law, and data-driven relationships became more and more legally significant. And so by the time I discovered blockchain smart contracts, I saw that it was going to be a tipping point for legal technology for us. And not because of trust, which is one of those words that I, as a lawyer, have very specific definitions for, but because it creates a better way of storing and proving reliable evidence and process assurance. This is something that we do constantly as our job as a lawyer. And so in order to build more complex data-driven relationships that are going to be enabled by blockchain, things that are involving moving money based on conditions, and these sophisticated commercial relationships we hear people talking about, we have to build this really carefully. And I wouldn't call this a new, the law, we're not really creating new relationships. We have new tools to execute our commercial intention. What it looks like to build these packages is significantly different, but related to law. Legal engineering as a process is much more a matter of combining cross-disciplinary technical skills with legal context. And then figuring out how we are going to achieve what it is the customer or the client wants to achieve with these new legal tools. And that often involves figuring out what new ways we can use to solve those complex, thorny problems that we have just thrown up our hands about. And that usually involves collaboration across companies. So what does it take in order for companies to elevate a standard commercial relationship that we used paper to achieve when we've got this new tool that enables us to store, create, and access our contracts for use in real time. And that opens up a whole new set of both efficiencies from a legal operations standpoint, but revenue streams across the value chain. But what I do like to emphasize is that while blockchain is a new type of technology, the relationships are not at the moment new relationships. This isn't, we often hear people saying the code or blockchain are the end of lawyers. It's not. It just is what brings us to recognize that and really finally admit that technology is integrated into law. It's not a subject matter expertise. And legal engineering is the process of building things that are going to work or more likely to work for more people in commerce. Think of it like the standard prescriptions of forms that work well in commerce. They don't always work for everyone. You're going to have to change things to be bespoke for your need, and then from there, the solutions articulate and grow even further. So it's a really exciting place to be in, particularly with the logistics that Casey was just showing you. I think we have the ability to break through a lot of transactional process barriers that companies have been dealing with each other in the past.
Nina, we have about 5 more minutes before I want to turn it over to the next speaker. We were hoping to also talk a little bit about the specific legal use cases. Were you going to show us some, or?
Well, we hadn't intended to show some specific legal use cases, but certainly I can talk about, for example, when we talk about making commercial relationships, from a paper-based standpoint, we make those things modularly, right? So you've got a large set of complex terms and conditions that right now are probably not well translated into a smart contract functionality. But if you're going to have a complex relationship, you've got to have that. So what we do is we dual integrate our terms and conditions so that we have a set of operating rules. But from there, you take the standard legal processes that we know work from 1,000 years of jurisprudence and use, like commercial paper, promissory notes, and look at what are the functional standards we use, why do we use them to make them work. And so those are the kinds of documents that we start with to reconfigure the way those commercial legal relationships would work.
Okay, got it. Then in terms of the other industries that you're working with, what would be, I mean, it was very interesting to see, how those scripts are running that Casey showed before. Can you give us an example for a concrete use case? It's in financial or in another.
Sure.
Sure, like a letter of credit, trade finance. That would be a fairly common thing that would use our logistics use case. Anything that's going to tie together both your goods, your money, and your process.
Okay, so but more specifically, what's recorded then in the blockchain, and how does the workflow look like?
The transactional history is recorded. So you've got an operating agreement, a master agreement that is recorded that gives the rules by which the smart contracts are going to operate. Then the processes that are significant that we know or the customer needs to record because of their particular use case are recorded and deployed to the blockchain. So first we have the initial genesis of the evidence chain, and then we have this series of events that is fulfillment of the terms and conditions of the event, and we can link the fulfillment to the contract in order to ensure that things are going the way that they were supposed to go. We minimize fraud and counterfeiting in the supply chain by doing that. But then we have the ability to look backwards with an audit to confirm from a forensic standpoint what happened with the money, goods, and where.
Okay, got it. Makes sense. Any other questions? Anyone in the group here or online? Any questions for Casey?
If you have time, I just want to make a comment or two.
Go ahead. Go, Monica.
Forgive me, I forgot the name of the first presenter. Can you remind me?
Casey and Nina. Casey and Nina.
Casey, I just want. I come to CodeX with a journalism aspect. And one of the things that I really try to preach on is in making these sorts of, obviously here we have a very sophisticated market, but I don't know very much about this. And what I found on that was that there was a lot of repetitive jargon in it. And I would strongly urge you to, and I'm sure you're doing this to a large degree because you're going to do separate things on whoever the audience is. But I would, we all get caught up in our own worlds, but I had a hard time following yours because I don't know very much about it. And there was so much jargon in it that it kind of tuned me out. So my recommendation would just be don't assume that the people in the audience really understand the basic concept. And if you spent a little bit more time on that, I think you'd get even more interest from it. So I hope that's helpful.
Sure. Yeah, it's always every audience is unique in where they are in terms of understanding this. So when you're coming in a new audience, it's always a little bit of a back and forth. And obviously when you're presenting remote and you can't see people's faces, it's hard to know where you should slow down a little bit and then speed up. But I take the point generally, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was all very good. But Roland, am I being too much a journalist here?
No, I think you made a fair point. So thank you, Monica. Maybe we have there's one person who chatted a question asking, hi, could you explain the difference between the concept of chain of custody and what you described that the blockchain does?
I can take that one.
Oh.
The blockchain itself is simply an event log of things that have happened at the network level, whereas the chain of custody, which Nina was speaking to, is more in terms of the chain of custody of a particular object. In other words, what are the various ownership arrangements that have happened with respect to this particular object? So more in the legal sense of the chain of custody.
Okay, thank you. All right, so unfortunately we don't have more time now, and I wanted to turn it over to Elon. But yeah, please join me in thanking our speakers. Thank you so much for your presentation. And and let me turn it over. Thank you. Let me turn it over to you now. Do you have okay, cool.
Why are we washed out today?
I don't know, that the projector is kind of weird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Hi, my name is Elon Fields. I'm the founder of Gideon. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great to have you.
To be here.
Do you want to move over a bit so people can pick up your... Here's the microphones here, so I'm going to make sure people hear you.
All right. So Gideon is your legal concierge. I mean, what we're trying to do is bridge the justice gap to meet the needs of the private bar, legal aid providers, as well as the people who need civil representation. And we are here to augment, not replace, the invaluable in-person resources. Just a brief overview is to look to talk briefly about the justice gap, specifically looking at the relationship between access to justice and access to lawyers, and then looking at major obstacles faced by legal service providers and legal consumers, and then talk about the innovation that we're doing at Gideon to address some of these issues. So access to justice should be understood as a human right, yet we seem to be living in a country where that is not the case. People are wrongfully losing their homes, their jobs, custody of their children, and are being victimized by discrimination and consumer rights violations every day due to lack of legal representation. This is largely due to the fact that in the U.S. we do not have a right to counsel for civil matters, and equal access to justice is directly correlating to having access to lawyers. People living at or below the sorry.
Is that coming from
That's
our
us again.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, that's our machine. Sorry for that.
No problem. So people living at or below the poverty line or on federal or on public benefits simply cannot afford the cost of a lawyer. And 80% of more than the 63 million who are eligible for federally funded legal services are dealing with unmet legal needs. For millions of Americans who live just above the poverty level, all the way through middle income, legal representation is cost prohibitive. Across the nation, trial courts are seeing increased numbers of unrepresented litigants, raising the concern about equal access to justice even further. In Massachusetts, where I'm from, over 93% of tenants in housing court are unrepresented, and the low rates of representation are mirrored in the rates of judgment. Tenants win possession in about 2% of cases. And in New York City, where there are tens of thousands of eviction cases each year, you have a 75% better chance of winning possession if you have an attorney. And studies in various states across the country show these disparities, indicate these disparities are also common in family law issues, domestic violence matters, consumer matters, debt collection, and discrimination. So why is 80% of the civil legal aid? Why is 80% of the civil legal needs of the eligible population not being met? And how can we change the ecosystem of the legal world to better accommodate for the legal needs of the middle-income members of our communities? I spent months visiting law firms and legal service organizations and advocacy groups and talking with law professors and legal tech entrepreneurs and reading access to justice reports and future of legal service publications, and even sitting on court hearings to investigate how people get lawyers, how lawyers get clients, and more accurately understand this fatal disconnect between the laws on the books and access to those laws and their protections. And in doing so, it became evident that people's needs were often unmet, not because the organization couldn't help them, but because the systems they used were too inefficient to effectively process their needs. Current client intake procedures are labor-intensive, intermittently inaccurate, costly, and limited to work hour availability. Lawyers are spending valuable time sort of sorting through cases to qualify leads, and law firms and organizations spend hours on these manual processes, resulting in a lower conversion rate, missing out on possible winnable and priority cases, and causing a hindrance to office operations. And with now more than 3/4 of all potential clients turning to the internet to find a lawyer at some point during the process, the need for an active digital presence is greater than ever. Some legal aid organizations and bar associations have deployed online intake systems in efforts to remedy some of these systemic problems, but the information gathered by these forums is minimal, thereby requiring follow-up phone calls or meetings, which means lag time. And law firm websites, 97% of them don't have any personalized content. A significant number lack basic contact information, and 70% do not have a call to action, even though 74% of all legal consumers go to law firm websites to take immediate action. All federally funded legal service organizations have pro bono referral panels consisting of attorneys who have agreed to take referrals from their local legal aid office. Referrals lacking in information and that are delayed due to the deficiencies I've described often arrive dead on arrival, or significantly weakened when they reach the attorney, either because the urgent legal issue has timed out or because the evidence or litigant themselves has disappeared. In addition, many people who seek legal aid from legal services don't necessarily have strong legal cases, but would greatly benefit from non-legal intervention, such as eviction prevention funds. Their intake at a legal aid office should be an intake for any and all resources in that community that they might be eligible for, so that they can be best assisted. But it seems that the legal and social service providers in a specific region are largely ignorant of each other's existence or even mission. And if it's difficult, if the different providers aren't aware of each other's existence, then how can we expect the public to be able to navigate the system and be informed of all options? This brings us to Gideon. Gideon is an artificially intelligent system that acts as a legal concierge. It intelligently asks tailored legal questions to understand a consumer's legal situation, then performs a multi-dimensional analysis and provides the evidence-based case assessment to the appropriate service provider, enabling them to deliver help with great accuracy. And we have like a vision. We envision a world where where legal services are democratized, and we're laying the foundation for our vision with a web-based app for legal service providers. And again, we're here to augment, not replace, the invaluable in-person resources. So seamlessly interfacing with law firm websites, Gideon's proactive AI conducts a seamless and personalized intake and data-driven assessment process for consumer-based legal practices. Our technology makes engaging and assessing potential clients 100% autonomous, makes websites intelligent, and is a cost-effective solution to replace the inefficient manual systems currently. Gideon engages all online leads 24/7 in natural language, sort of adding the human touch to automation and transforming a static website into an interactive experience. Our intelligent algorithms qualify all incoming leads and present the case assessment on a simple and easy-to-use dashboard for lawyers, enabling law firms to avoid wasting valuable resources on poor leads, know which leads to nurture into clients, and optimize its workflows and revenue stream. Inspired by the civil Gideon movement advocating for right to counsel and civil legal issues, we especially designed an automated triage for legal service organizations, directing persons needing legal help to the most appropriate form of assistance. Our system determines eligibility, identifies priority cases for an organization, lawsuits that should be referred to the private bar, and disputes that can be resolved through non-legal resources like social services. By automating these routine intake processes, we're able to alleviate the burden from the intake staff and allow them to to assist clients in more substantive ways. We are primarily focused on online leads, so we are making our technology available on computers and tablets to assist with like walk-ins, eliminating long wait times in offices. We've also specifically designed our triage system to provide high-quality referrals to the private bar, incentivizing a spectrum of client-attorney relationships with the use of fee shifting and unbundling of legal service options, enabling the private bar and legal aid community to increase their capacity to represent low to moderate income individuals. Fee shifting statutes have been around for over half a century, yet very few people benefit from. These are provisions in civil rights, employee rights, tenant rights, and consumer rights that are intended to provide access to justice through access to lawyers, but are devastatingly underutilized. And recently, lawyers have been unbundling their services to make them more affordable for millions of Americans who can't afford full representation in the typical upfront retainers of thousands of dollars, but who do not qualify for LSC-funded programs. It offers a creative solution for lawyers to provide effective legal help within a client's limited budget. And Gideon is a means to bridge the gap for legal help in these areas with legal services. We are also designing and testing algorithms to predict relevant outcomes to an individual's legal dispute, like winnability, duration, and cost. Thus, Gideon will provide lawyers with analysis of likely outcomes based on precedent and case law, enabling lawyers to provide legal help with sort of unprecedented accuracy. Gideon, synthesizes data and relevant law to enable lawyers to operate their highest quality and capacity, and we aim to help lawyers modernize their practice so that they can focus on what they do best, representing and helping their clients resolve issues. Since I founded Gideon about 3 months ago, we've developed 3 modules for eviction defense cases, affirmative tenant cases, and personal injury matters. That doesn't look right. We are focused on housing and personal injury matters, but we have plans to expand to handle a range of legal issues. And these prototypes are currently being tested at law firms who specialize in these respective areas. Specific to eviction defense in Massachusetts, Gideon is able to identify the stage of process, who's likely to win possession, calculate the monetary valuation, rate the quality of evidence supporting the defense claims, and identify if fee-shifting statutes can be used. In regards to affirmative tenant cases, Gideon screens for the urgency of the legal issue and then analyzes it for fee-shifting potential and monetary valuation. So in a few very easy to understand questions, a person facing an eviction or living in awful housing conditions can be referred directly to an attorney in a manner that conveys the legal strength of their case and fee-shifting potential without the need for intake or referral staff.
What's the fee shift? What does that mean?
Fee shifting?
Fee shifting potential.
Just identifying if a fee shifting statute in that state or federal allows for it to be used in that case. Identifying if
fees are shifted from who to who. Sorry.
So fee shifting preventions that allow like a lawyer to take a client at no cost to them, but if they win on there's certain things, they're awarded their attorney's fees by the losing side.
Oh, okay. Right.
And so identifying where this can be used to enable the private bar to handle them or legal services.
Are you going to show us how it works?
I don't have one right now.
Okay. But does it work more like is it more conversational interface like a chatbot, or how does it work?
Yeah, so it's a conversational interface that's sort of embedded into existing law firm websites.
Okay, and how do you build a knowledge base for each chatbot or for your system? It's probably different from practice area to practice area. And from law firm to law firm. You have to go into the law firm and then try to understand, what are the typical forms that they're using when they intake a client, and then you try to have your system kind of replicate that form, or?
Yeah, I mean, different law firms and organizations have different practices for like onboarding clients, but I've been working, so for like housing, personal injury, I mean, it's not too different between the organization or law firm, and so I've been working with sort of experts, sort of experienced attorneys, and designing the algorithms with their sort of consultation and identifying like the major factors, and how they sort of assess and the forms they use, and talking with intake staff about the type of conversations they have with potential clients and how they sort of get information, the language they use.
And what does the system spit out then? Does it tell people, okay, you have to go to a specific place, or you have to do certain things, or does it just intake information and then the attorney has to get back to the person? Yes, right now it's just providing this information to the attorney so that they're able to understand how to best serve them. So it's like for eviction defense, it's identifying like the monetary valuation or who's likely to win possession. Just from a simple set of questions, we're able to like identify the likelihood of those outcomes happening. Can you give us a concrete example? I mean, for one specific area of the law or a specific interaction? Sure. I mean, I'm just trying to think. I think so. A set of questions. Identify for like eviction defense, like looking at how that might work. Yeah. Or the type of questions. Or? Yeah, the type of questions, and then how does the system specifically assist the lawyer then, or the client? Sure. So with like eviction defense, I mean, asking questions starting with like, are they public or private housing? Do they have, what's the reason for their eviction? Do they have, do they have a notice? Do they have a court installment? Like, are they going to court? Understanding what sort of stage they're at, and then using Massachusetts. This is specific to Massachusetts law, which is different than others. And then what does the AI do? We're able to, so we've programmed to sort of know the amount of money that's allocated or sort of associated with each damage to each issue or defense claim, and from that we're able to predict the evaluation, if that makes the evaluation of the case. So whether it's like heat, water, if this is like if this is a non-payment, but there's bad conditions present, and they want to sort of present these bad conditions, and so being able to like document them and assess sort of the severity of the issue, and looking at how we can. Okay. And where do you get the data from? You've got to sort of compare it to sort of existing cases that were litigated to know what the probability is, first of all, that a judge would rule in favor of the tenant, and then what the damages are. Where do you get the data from? So right now we're getting data from like individual law firms that's being and it's based on their experience. Yeah. Okay. So we're looking at definitely something we want to learn more about and talk with people maybe in this community is about accessing larger data sets and looking at ways to access that more effectively than just from law firms, and creating it on our own for real life use cases.
But I think it's fair to say that the secret sauce here is that you use basically the same kind of premise that predictive can really help with case valuation. It's mostly used in high-value litigation, right? And you're helping small firms kind of take on cases that they may not normally, that maybe get kicked out of pro bono, but still could have some value to the private bar, at the small and solo level. So have you talked to any bar associations about this particular product and testing it and what?
In terms of like their referral network or their?
Well, actually, that's one place it could go. The lawyer referral, but also, smalls and solos may want to, especially the ones that have this kind of sweet spot where you have PI and eviction, and where some of these dollar amount, they're more predictive,
right.
Can help determine case value in those situations.
So I have talked to a number of bar associations, and also just like, going through their network and members of different law firms in this area, and I've started to, get a lot of interest and starting to sign.
So they've been receptive?
Yeah, and so now we're testing, but also signing first batch of like contracts. But these are the prototypes, and we'll go from there.
Great.
Cool. Sorry,
chatting up.
Monica, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm really chatty today. Last week we had a program about Matterhorn from, I don't remember her first name, last name was Chat. Roland, do you remember her last name? Cartwright? Cartwright. And it might be helpful for you to call up on her and find out what she's doing. She's doing a program in the Midwest where they've actually got it live on stuff with being able to go in and do it all online. I think you guys might have opportunities together. And my other request before I stop talking is, when you have a chance at the end, would you repeat your first one, because I want to get your address so I can email you some stuff.
Yes, I will definitely do that, and I will get the contact information. I would love to learn more about their work.
Thank you. Sure. Sorry,
No.
It seemed like you had a few more.
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, but this is sort of the current focus on housing and personal injury, and just looking at without requiring intake or referral staff, we can sort of automatically make that high quality referral in a manner that conveys the legal strength. And then in personal injury, similar, slightly different. Gideon sort of first identifies the location and type of accident, asks questions to sort of understand the breach of duty, and then encompassing major factors, measures the severity and duration of the injury to help lawyers identify the potential value that client will bring to their firm.
So 2 questions people have chatted. So one, how and when do you screen for conflicts?
In terms of like conflict checks?
Yeah.
So that's something we're working on right now. It's not, in terms of like legal aid, it's not really an issue. Legal aid, a nonprofit, legal aid is not going to take a landlord case when they're taking a tenant, or they're not going to take a corporation when they're taking a consumer. And in personal injury, again, it's not so common due to the fact that these are like personal injury plaintiff lawyers, so they're only taking one side. But in terms of like when we expand to other issues and still within these, but like family, where that would be a major issue, where I'm investigating the existing tools and methods that those law firms use to do that check, and either how we can integrate that directly into Gideon, or how Gideon can make do that first conflict check, and if anything comes up based on the name or the location of the client, that it would it would inform the lawyers to sort of reach out directly to that client if they're interested.
What underlying technologies are you using to produce the intelligent Q&A?
Underlying technology. So right now, I mean, it's really basic. There's nothing too crazy in that right now. I mean, we're for the prototypes, they're scripted at this point. Mm-hmm. But one thing we are looking more into is we had a strategic partnership with IBM in which they granted us access to Watson, and so we're looking at how that could best help, if that's the best mm-hmm. method to do a lot of the back end work for us.
Business model? Are you going to how do you pay the bills?
So yeah, the business model right now is just it's like B2B direct sales to like law firms and organizations. I mean, at this point, the source will come from private. And we do see the potential to work with legal organizations and have them being paying customers, whether it's a big contract with like LSC or with independent organizations through like take grants. But right now, it's a monthly subscription basis, and based on like the volume of your firm, the number of leads, it's a tier pricing model.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, not to be cynical, but you kind of led with a pro bono angle. It seems like, when you tie that to like how do I make money question, it seems like a lot of the law firms are going to be less interested in purchasing this technology for pro bono purposes, to using it to automate their screening process and valuing the cases that come through, that sort of thing. So I'm wondering how does that kind of change your approach at all? I don't know, maybe just respond to that potential conflict, if you will.
Sure. Just law firms would be hesitant to use it specifically for pro bono purposes rather than
Yeah, it seems to me like, having worked at a law firm, they're thinking about the bottom line. I mean,
right.
Not to say that law firms have pro bono practices. It almost seems like if you're trying to build a business here, you wouldn't want to lead with the pro bono angle. You'd want to lead with the fact that this is a great tool to help you screen clients and value cases.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. Thanks. That's a good point. And that is sort of for this presentation, it wasn't sort of like looking more at the justice gap and how this can play a role and bridge that. But when talking with private law firms, it is focused on all their clientele and for bottom line because it is workflow automation, but also can provide sort of revenue optimization by increasing their conversion rates, but also looking at they can be more selective and have greater insights into their client and potential clients and identifying the value that they bring and sort of what kind of clients they want to work with. So it is not limited to just pro bono work, but for all their clients.
So going back to the pro bono side, have you met with legal aid departments at law schools? Is that kind of or target potentially that you thought of already? Or?
Yeah, we met with some. We met with some like law school incubators or things or like
departments within law schools.
Yeah, like I was recently at like Harvard at like H Lab and I was talking to them and yeah, it's a great organization. So I've been both at law schools but also with LSE funded programs and other legal aid clinics.
Does anyone online have another question? How are things going so far? I mean, you're already signing up law firms and partnerships. And you started about half a year ago on the project.
Yeah, it was just officially launched it like three months ago. Yeah, but yeah, before that was investigation research and immersion process. Yeah.
So your focus is on getting law firms signed up now, and then building out the product.
Yeah.
I mean, are you building yourself, or you have like?
I'm working with two full stack developers, and so they're doing the technical component, and working with groups of advisors on the legal side for each practice area, and slowly focus on building and sort of working with different law firms and growing that now, and then I think the only last slide I have is sort of the vision we see.
Okay.
If we can just finish that, if we have time.
We have 1 more minute.
All right. So we do envision building a Gideon for consumers, or to be sort of part of the next generation of online legal marketplaces and lead generation providers, in which we provide a new paradigm for the public to access the existing, the ecosystem of all legal and social services, and to build a centralized system with all the relevant stakeholders from the private parts of legal aid and also with federally and state-funded social service programs. And we started to lay the foundation by coordinating with all these different stakeholders and placing Gideon to be the concierge and utilizing the same intake and assessment process. We would deliver high-quality and pre-qualified leads directly to the inboxes of lawyers and also perform an automatic eligibility analysis for both legal and non-legal intervention to accommodate the needs of all income levels. Sort of the future.
Cool. That's a big vision. We're definitely cheering for you, so hopefully you'll succeed with that. I mean, I think what's interesting is how you, and I think the previous question went to that already. You started out with the problem of trying to help legal aid organizations in their intake, but then that technology that you're developing can also be used by law firms, and maybe you might actually help this triaging thing, right? Okay, this is a person that has capacity to pay bills, but not at not at $1,000 an hour, and you might actually be able to help that person find the right lawyer for that particular matter. And then this is the person who actually needs to go to the right legal aid group, and this in itself would be extremely valuable if you get that working. I think that would be great.
Yeah, that's the vision.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. So thank you all for joining us. So next week
a break. And then the following week, the 18th, there's presenters, and then we're on break for a while for summer.
Until July,
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you all.
Thanks.
Thank you. What's your name?
Mike, answer.
Scott McCloud, just wanted to say hi.